So I hope everyone is doing well, and we're going to get started here. So some of you may know me, some of you may not. If you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I am Dr. Jessica Chung. I am a doctor of nursing practice and a family nurse practitioner. I practice in Florida, originally from New York. So I'll just give a little background about myself and then I'll go into the tips. Originally from New York, born and raised, and I received my associate's degree while living in New York, moved to Florida for work, and went on for my bachelor's degree and my master's in family nurse practitioner. And then I received my doctorate last year from Stanford University. So I graduated with my master's 4 years ago now. So this is 2015. So 2015, it was very, that process of finding clinicals, preceptors was very hard. And that was hard at that time. So I can only imagine now 4 years later how difficult it is. And being that I practice and teach, I know, I hear the stories all the time about preceptors and students not able to find preceptors. And of course the big thing out there is the charging, and whether some students are okay with paying, or some schools don't find that it's ethical, or some schools are actually giving stipends to preceptors. So I know that with all that's being said, that it's very difficult to really lock down a preceptor, because one, nurse practitioners, there's a shortage, and then two, nurse practitioners are so swamped in clinical practice. So I just felt very led to do this video because I wanted to share some tips that I thought were helpful, and some things I learned along the way, and some things I see even now in clinicals being in practice, of what would help nurse practitioner students, what I feel would help nurse practitioner students find preceptors and lock down preceptors. All right, so of course this is being recorded live, so you guys can always go back and watch, but if you are taking notes, I will be sure to go slowly, and then also at the end I'll open up for questions. All right, so my top tips. So I have 10, and of course if there's anything I'll add it in between as I go along. So my first tip, as far as finding a preceptor, finding a clinical site, is showing up at the potential clinical site in person. And for me personally, that increases your chances of getting us on the spot interview or getting placed. Your chances of getting placed are really high when you show up on the spot. You really have nothing to lose showing up to the potential clinical site and just saying, hey, I need a preceptor. Are you taking students? It shows that you're diligent and you're willing to at least take that time out and go to that office and introduce yourself in person. And they really take that into consideration. I did that a lot. I went to sites and I would just show up in person, and sometimes I would call, but I would talk about that later. But showing up in person to that potential clinical site, most chances you'll get a different response showing up in person than just calling on the phone. And so in addition to that, I want to ask for the office manager or the contact person for the clinicals. And usually you don't want to just, not that anything's wrong with speaking to the receptionist or MA at the desk or whatnot, but you want to try to speak to that person that's directly in charge of the students' placement. So that could be like the office manager. Sometimes it's someone off-site at the corporate office. And so you always want to just get to that main person that you can talk to in regards to getting placed in clinicals. And in addition to that, first tip, always bring the necessary documents that need to be signed. In my opinion, if you're needing a clinical preceptor and you come and they're willing to take you on the spot, why not be prepared? Come with all the documents, the agreement. I know it's like the clinical site agreement and the preceptor agreement, all those papers that the schools ask for. Show up and show up ready. Bring those documents that need to be signed. So that way you're not saying, okay, I'll come back tomorrow or I'll fax it. Things get lost in fax and emails. So you just want to show up and be ready. So that's tip number one, showing up to the clinical site in person. Showing up in person, asking for the office manager or the contact person for clinicals, bringing the necessary documents. Okay. So tip number two, in addition to always bringing necessary documents, you want to bring a resume with you. If you already completed clinicals, include those experience on the resume. So you want to, if you've done a clinical prior to that class or whatnot, whatever clinicals you've already done, put that on the resume. So obviously you're an RN in NP school, and you want to show your RN experience, of course, but you want to show what clinical experience you already have, because a lot of sites take that into consideration. They want to know, what site you were at before. Are you familiar with the EMR in a primary setting, or not just primary, but in any setting? Are you familiar with using an EMR system outside of being an RN? And are you familiar with how to at least document the basics and HPI and whatnot? So they want to see that on the resume. That really will help as well. So always bring a resume to you when you show up. So first one, you want to show up. Second, you always want to bring a resume. My tip number three, this is a tip. It's calling and asking if they take students is not always the best idea. And I know because I've done it. I've done it for students in the teaching setting. So just calling a bunch of sites and asking if they're taking students. Yes, you might get a positive response in regards to yes, they might say yes, but they also probably got 15 other phone calls before you. So there's nothing wrong with calling and asking if they take students, but you definitely want to show up. You don't want to just call and they say yes, and then you're trying to set up a time and day that you can come and meet whoever. So I would say call and then show up. Don't just call and ask for an email and you want to follow the protocol of the practice, of course, but don't have 20 sites and call all 20 sites. At least show up to at least 10 of them. That way you increase your chances of getting placed. And in addition to that, tip number three, think about if you called around places and asked if they were hiring. You are better up showing up in person, letting them see you and meet you, and putting a face to a name. So in today's world, we don't call places and say, hey, are you hiring? Usually everything's done online, but it's better to show up in person in addition to calling. All right. So tip number four, represent your college or university well. You want to treat finding a clinical preceptorship as a job interview. So you want to arrive, in my opinion, you want to arrive in your white coat, have your school ID badge on, arrive in your white coat or have your school ID badge on. And you also, as I mentioned before, you want to look like you're ready to learn and get to work. It's all about preparation. So if they see you show up in person, you got your white coat on, you got your school emblem on there, or you got your ID badge on, you're dressed for success, casual, business casual. However, you want to show up as if you're ready to work. And that says a lot. Even in the corporate world, when we show up ready to work, we look good, we feel good, and people will see that in you as well. So represent your college, university well. Represent yourself well. So show up in your white coat, or at least the very least have your school ID badge on. They should not have to ask you what school you're from. They should be able to at least see it on your white coat or see your ID badge. All right. Tip number 5. Ask your previous preceptor to precept you again if they are appropriate for an upcoming class. I did this back when I was in school. I had a preceptor. I think I used him for a physician. I used him for 2 or 3 classes. Of course, I know that schools have limitations as far as how often you can use one preceptor. But if you can use that preceptor for another class, lock them in as early as possible. Get that paperwork signed for that, whatever that next class is. If it's health assessment and you need someone for practicum and you can use the same preceptor, go ahead and do that. You want to just lock them in. Get them to sign the necessary documents in advance, because if they like you, lock them in. If you like them, lock them in. Don't stress yourself out in trying to find a whole new preceptor. If you can use the same preceptor, nothing hurts in asking the preceptor to precept you again. Okay. All right. So tip number 6, and we're moving a little quickly, but I'm going to open up for questions. All right. So tip number 6, you want to look for non-traditional clinical sites. And when I say non-traditional, if you are a family nurse practitioner or if you're in a family nurse practitioner program, or really, even if it's adult, family, pediatric, acute is more, they have more restrictions on where acute nurse practitioner students can precept. But even so, this tip can go for everyone. You want to look for non-traditional clinical sites. So that includes anything outside of a primary care office, urgent care, outside of your normal typical outpatient setting. So that includes assisted living facilities. You want to look into there for preceptors as a clinical site. Some prisons have clinics set up where they do have nurse practitioners there to take care of those that are there. Religious related sites, you want to look into those religious related organizations that have clinics. Also the ones that also, like here in Florida, they have metropolitan ministries. So those homeless shelters are those ones that are helping people in need. They have clinics, those free low-cost clinics. You want to look into those as well. In more of the bigger cities, like I know New York has hospital-based outpatient clinics. So these are clinics that are within the hospitals. And so not every hospital has those, but look into those hospital-based outpatient clinics, because you're not actually precepting in the hospital, which can be a little of an issue for the FNP program or any primary care program. But look for those hospital-based outpatient clinics, because they're in the hospital, but they're also clinics. You want to also look into your drugstore clinics. And so that includes your Walgreens and your CVS Minute clinics. And that's going to be in the next tip. So you want to look for non-traditional clinical sites. Look for a mobile nurse practitioner. There's a lot of nurse practitioners out there that have their own clinics. So look for a mobile nurse practitioner. She could definitely probably use, or he could definitely use help. So that would include traveling to different sites or different homes. You want to look into that as well. Look into house calls, nurse practitioners, and they go to the homes as well and do patient care. So look outside of the traditional office setting. All right, tip number 7. So this goes with those chain clinic, drugstore, and hospital express type clinics. So those applications for those type of clinics, they're usually should be done 6 months to 1 year in advance for placement. And they are usually done online, like job applications. So I did a preceptorship with CVS Minute Clinic. And I want to say I did that application months before they even called me. So you want to do those early. They do place students. There's pros and cons to that. So they do give you, sometimes I think they ask if where you would like to go, or like give your choice of location. So bear in mind, because of the competitiveness and the amount of students looking for preceptors, if you get in with one of those, they may send you a little further from home, but it's a guaranteed clinical site. So, and it looks good on your resume too, but keep that in mind that you should do those at least 1 year, 6 months to 1 year in advance for placement. So that's tip number 7. Tip number 8, if your school offers stipends to preceptors, use that to your advantage. That's just the truth. If your school offers a stipends, just use it to your advantage. It's a hard job, you know, working as a nurse practitioner. Any medical job is patient care. So if the school is offering a stipend to preceptors, use that to your advantage. Does it mean that schools who offer stipends would take students over schools who don't offer stipends? No. Am I suggesting that anyone go out and use one of those preceptor finder websites? That's up to you if you want to pay that money. I'm doing this video to help so that, you know, you can take a step or look outside the box in finding preceptors, and however way you have to do that. But I know some schools offer stipends, some schools don't. Some schools tell students that they don't have any policy on whether or not they pay a fee. So it's I know it's like controversial now, but however, if your school offers a stipend to preceptors, use it to your advantage. And however, if your school doesn't offer a stipend, that's fine, because, you know, it's still treated like a job interview. You keep looking and looking until you find someone. But if you have a preceptor who's precepting you, whether you pay a fee or the school gives a stipend, in my opinion, leave that preceptor with a token of appreciation at the end of the semester. It shows that you appreciate them, especially if you want to use them again. Just show a token of appreciation. That's all. And I'll just be honest, most nurse practitioners are willing to precept because the hours that we give in precepting, it goes towards our recertification. So we have to have a certain amount of hours. So those hours that you precept go towards recertification. Nobody wants to take that recertification exam again. I know I don't. So it's to your advantage. It's to the nurse practitioner's advantage to take students. So don't feel like all hope is lost. All right. So tip number 9. This one is something I did. Use a physician as much as possible. So you want to max out using a physician, only because I know most schools are limiting how often or how many times you can use a physician for preceptors. And so I would say if you can use a physician twice, you try to use that same physician twice, or using 2 physicians twice. Because of the shortage of nurse practitioners that are available for preceptorship and the competitiveness, using a physician as much as possible as your school allows. So I'll give a little story. I was going into my first clinicals, which was health assessment. And of course, I had like a place that I was going to use. And when it came time to like get all the final things done, they were like, oh no, we can't take you anymore. And so I was like down to the wire. It was like very close to that deadline of when I had to submit paperwork to do my clinicals. And so I remember I was working at work on the floor, and there was a physician that passed, and I just said, hey, do you take students in your office? And he was like, sure, yeah, just call my office and talk to my office manager. And so that's how I found my first preceptor after one place fell through, is that I just saw a doctor walking in the hallway, and I talked to him, and he was willing to take me as a student just because I just was in a desperate situation and I needed a preceptor. So don't be afraid to just step outside of your box and be open, and you're desperate. You gotta do what you gotta do. Nurse practitioner preceptorship is very different from how they do med school, as we know. So there are some schools that place students for nurse practitioners, but most schools now, nurse practitioner students have to find their own preceptorship. So do what you have to do. If you have to find a doctor walking around rounding and ask if he takes students in his practice, do that, and just use it to your advantage. So using a physician as much as possible. So if your school allows you to use a physician twice, use them twice. If they allow 3 times, use them 3 times. Max out on how often you can use a physician, because you want to do that so that the amount of nurse practitioners you have to find for preceptorship, you won't feel so pressured doing, trying to find a nurse practitioner. All right, tip number 10. I like this one. I didn't do this a lot, but I find that I think that can be very helpful. Attending your local or county nurse practitioner council meetings. So those are like, if you go to, there's some websites out there that will have your local or county nurse practitioner council meeting. So you want to attend those meetings. You can sign up as a student. Usually, depending on how they do membership, maybe you don't have to do the membership to attend a meeting. Usually they're dinner meetings. So like, usually they have some pharmaceutical company that comes in and wants to teach them about something, and they usually have it at a restaurant. Or they have a general meeting. So you want to try to attend those meetings. Go to healthcare events in your area. Network with other providers and other healthcare workers. Just because someone is not a nurse practitioner or a physician doesn't mean they can't connect you with a potential preceptor. So someone may have no medical, they may just work within a medical setting, but they're not a medical professional. They may be able to connect you with someone. So you want to go to networking events, business events, step outside that box, and you'll meet people. You'll meet a bunch of people. Recently I went to a county healthcare coalition meeting, and it was just giving the statistics of the health issues within the county. And I mean, there were vice presidents, VPs, medical directors, all sorts of people from large hospitals in the area I live. So if I was a student, that would have been my candy store to find a preceptor, because I would have networked and, just talked to all those VPs and physicians that were there at that coalition meeting. And another thing I want to add to that is make business cards. You can go on Vistaprint and make business cards cheap. Your business card can have your name, Mary Sue, RN, nurse practitioner student, and just step outside that box. I didn't do that, but I did know students that made business cards when I was in school, and it just shows you're professional. Make business cards. You can get them really cheap down on Vistaprint. Do you have to do that? No. Are you desperate enough to find a preceptor and go out of, the norm to find one and land a good preceptor? Yes. So go into those meetings, especially if you're going to go to a lot of those networking or healthcare events and you're wanting to meet individuals. Leave them with your business card. Take their business card, follow up with them, following up with the email. So if you talk to someone about a potential precepting, follow up with an email. Follow up with the email, letting them know, thank you for speaking with me on such and such date. I'm still looking for a preceptor. If you're interested in precepting me, please let me know. Send your resume, send, what hours you need, dates, because those are all things that are important. That preceptors take into consideration. So you definitely want to use that to your advantage. So those are the 10 tips that I have for everyone. And I hope that was helpful. So what I'm going to do is I have both Facebook and Instagram going. So if anyone has any questions, I will open it up for questions. And if anyone has any comments, please let me know. All right. So Jesse, hi Jesse. You said, what are your thoughts on bringing treats when visiting a potential clinical site? In addition to your resume and required documents, just wondering if it's frowned upon or considered thoughtful gesture. I don't think it's frowned upon. When some schools go out to offices to introduce themselves as a school for preceptors, clinical sites, they bring like pens and notepads and hand sanitizers. So if it's within your budget, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Now, if you're gonna visit 10 places and you have to buy 10 bags of candy, maybe that's probably too much for you, unless you get some dollar store candy. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, Jesse. I think anything, whatever you could do to try to get, you know, a preceptor, just do what you can. So I hope that helped. You're welcome, Stacy. Any other questions? Please feel free to ask. And even if it's outside of finding a clinical site, if there's any general questions on school, classes, I'm open to that, because I do want to continue doing series of videos. So please let me know what questions you have. Okay, Haleska, so your school handles the contract. You have no idea what the contract states. Put 2 potential preceptors back out on me. So I would probably say maybe just asking. Every school has a legal department when it comes to their site agreement form. I would say just asking what it actually says, or just asking for a copy, or just following back up with the preceptors and asking, just say, hey, out of curiosity, you and another preceptor backed out. I'm just curious as far as what the contract says. And maybe, in my opinion, maybe the school needs to explain to the preceptor what it is that maybe there's something within that contract that they don't quite understand. So I would say maybe following up with the school, asking the preceptors why. If you know definitely it was related to the contract. So, and then asking the school for a copy of it. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to get a copy of it, just to see what the issue is. But, you know, because this is your education, your time, and your money, you should be able to know. Okay. And Val said, thank you. You're welcome, Val. How did you balance work, clinicals, and study time? Oh boy. So for me, that's interesting. So for my master's program, I was working 3/12s. I started the program working 3 12-hour shifts in the hospital. And of course, so clinicals and study time, and then all the other things, church and other things going on. Let me just say that you have to find a balance. I mean, that may mean not hanging out as much, not doing as much as you normally do, really, you know, buckling down and taking care of school, because, you know, school is temporary, and this is for a temporary time until you finish and graduate. You can go on with your life. But what I will say is, by the time I got to like my last semester of my master's program, I was working like 1 or 2 days a week, and it was really down to 1. So that's just the truth. So even though I was only working 3 12-hour shifts a week, with doing clinicals twice a week and classes and papers and whatever else I had to do, I was down to like doing 1 day a week. And so that sometimes you do have to consider that, and schools will tell you that they will consider, you'd have to consider going part-time with working. And so you just have to take your life and your whatever you have going on and take it into consideration. All right. So Winnie, hi Winnie, you said my clinical site agreed to precept me, but it is a year out. I don't want them to forget about it. How often should I follow up? That's good, Winnie. So what at first I would suggest you do is making sure that they actually signed the paperwork. Whatever necessary paperwork and documents you need signed. Not that they can't back out, but hopefully that will keep them from backing out, getting it signed. And so follow up, I mean, a year out, I would maybe, you don't want to seem too drastic and say every month, but you don't want them to forget about you. So I would say at least every 2 to 3 months. And I mean, you could do this in numerous ways. You can send an email. So, you know, for example, in November, Thanksgiving's coming up. Maybe you can stop by their office and bring some treats, you know, Christmas, bring something, show up so that they see you, so that they don't forget you. And so that's what I would suggest, maybe following up and basically just making sure that they remember you and that they don't forget you. So emails, I wouldn't say phone calls because phone calls are, people forget sometimes phone calls, but emails, because you can track it. You can continue that thread of emails, showing up, holidays come, Valentine's Day, bring them some chocolates, you know, do something at least every 2 to 3 months until it's really time for clinicals. And I think when you get down to like the last 3 months, just make sure that you're all set when you're ready to go. All right. Hi, Aleska. So one told me that the contract was not a good match. Okay. So yeah, I would probably, I don't know. Every school has different contracts. So I can't imagine what they would put in a contract that would make a preceptor back out, unless it has something to do with not backing out on you, which is a good for you. But because people change jobs so much, you know, they probably don't want to lock down into something that, you know, would keep them from changing their mind. All right. Any other questions? Hi, Brittany. So if anyone, I'm going to give a little shout out to Brittany. Brittany is an esthetician. So if you see I have a glow, it's because my esthetician did a wonderful job on me earlier this week. And so and then get to know people in the medical world. It's not just nurses and doctors. Get to know estheticians and other respiratory therapists and physical therapists, because they know doctors, they know nurses, they know nurse practitioners. So network and get to know people. All right. Oh yes, don't forget your therapist. Hi, Kiv. All right. Any other questions? Please feel free. Anyone want to let me know what other videos you would be interested in seeing from me? And also I want to say hi, Kim. Thank you for joining. Hello, Halid. Thank you for joining. So to my students out there, any other questions or what other videos, tips you would like to see in the future? Make sure I got all the questions answered. All right. Contract. Okay. Okay, so Jesse asks favorite apps for clinicals. So what I use, and I still use them, I use Medscape and Hippocrates. Medscape gives you information on the medications and the diseases and disorders. So I use Medscape a lot when looking stuff up. And Hippocrates is more just medications. So those are the two apps I use. I know that there's probably a lot more out there, but those are the ones that I recommend. So I'll write it in the comments, Hippocrates and Medscape. And they're both free. Oh, also there's oh goodness, I can't remember the name of it right now. Oh, Up to Date. Up to Date is another one. I don't think it's free, or maybe your school might have a subscription to it. Up to Date is another one. That's good. All right. Kib asked, how do you stay updated with healthcare meeting in the community? So you can go on your like event website. So Eventbrite, I found the one I went to recently. I found that one on Eventbrite. Going on to your like maybe your Department of Health website and just seeing if they have any events coming up. Facebook, anywhere that has events listed, or just Google search healthcare events, healthcare meetings in your city or your town, and just seeing if anything comes up. So I'm always searching for those things because I like to go to them. So that's how I recommend staying updated with those meetings in the community. All right, any other questions? So Alexis joined on Instagram. Hi, Alexis. All right, awesome. So I hope that helped everyone. So if anyone has any questions, you can, or anything after this, you can message me. You're more than welcome to just message me on Facebook, or you can send me an email. I will put my email. My email address should be on my page somewhere, but you can send me an email. And, anyone from Florida by any chance? Anyone live in Florida? I know who lives in Florida, but any of the other students in Florida, just out of curiosity. You're welcome, Haleska. So I wish you guys all the best, all the students. I wish you all the best. And please reach out to me if you have any questions. So another thing I'll just add is make sure, in addition to the balancing, I'll just add making sure you have good support systems. So family and friends that know you're in school. So if you call on them to help with your kids, or you know, or that's another thing, when you make the decision to go to school, go back to school, or go to school, and you're in school, just making sure family and friends understand that you're in school and you may not have as much time to do things, so that they are there to support you. All right. Oh, Haleska, you're in Tampa. That's awesome. That's great. You're in my area. That's good. Oh, Shannon, you're in Florida too. Awesome. Okay. All right. Oh, Stacy, you're in Florida. Oh, wow. I had a lot of Florida people. That's awesome. Okay. That's great. So yeah, I know for Florida, definitely look into your city or your county nurse practitioner network council, because there's always most of them have monthly meetings, sometimes twice a month. So Teleska, you can look into the Tampa Bay Nurse Practitioner. I think it's the Tampa Bay Nurse Practitioner Network. Oh, Stacy, you're in Clearwater. Shannon, you're in Tampa. Okay. Teleska, yes. Since I know I didn't know all you guys were local, maybe I need to do a local meetup. That would be fun. Okay. All right. So I know I don't want to take up any more of your time. I thank you guys. Please share the video with other students, even the nurse practitioners that you know that, so they may not be able to take students, but hopefully the video will help other nurse practitioners help other students. So I can imagine I've gotten numerous emails for preceptorship, and so I would love to help everyone, but that's not possible. But please share the video, like and comment, and let me know what you guys think or what other videos you would like to see. I will also be doing videos for my nurses, so keep that in mind. If you have any friends that are in nursing school or new nurses, I will also be doing some videos for them as well. All right, so you guys have an awesome Friday and an awesome weekend, and enjoy yourselves and be blessed, everyone. Thank you.